So today, this is basically the outline of the presentation. Improved striping productivity using today's technology. We're going to cover a little bit on the electric stripers and drivers, the new two-color machines, the dot lasers, the line generating laser.
Some of the other stuff we'll talk about is auto layout. Big fan of auto layout, used it for many years now. Auto guns, been using that quite a bit. Line drivers, that's been around a long time, but there's still people out there that are not using them. And then the other thing, apps and data logging, that's new as of last year. We can now download all the information off the machine onto a computer pretty easily.
This is just an example of one job that we used the auto layout machine on, auto layout lasers. In fact, this was kind of a unique job because the way the layout was done on the job, we actually didn't even pull a tape measure on the entire job. We used the auto layout to measure our drive aisles. We used the laser to establish our baseline throughout the parking lot, and then auto layout to measure and divide.
This was one of the jobs that we got done at the end of this job and looked back at it and saw what an amazing feature the line generating laser could do for us. See how you could keep them so straight in such a long distance. Made a big difference. Cut our time in half by using the auto layout. So this was one of the first ones we did, and this was probably 6 years ago.
So here, this next video is just kind of an overview of the old way versus the new way.
We did that for many years. We would follow that string line. Some people chalk line, some people use string line. That's just how we learned, was using a string line. So.
And this job was right here in Otsego, right just about 5 minutes from Graco headquarters.
That string line there obviously is not a production made. That is a handmade unit, and we just had to come up with something because we wanted, almost a quarter of a mile of string on one thing, and that's what we made.
A lot of people would probably use a chalk line to snap those lines with chalk. We actually just followed along a string line, so we'd put the string down, paint the line, move the string over, paint the next line. Now we eliminated that, and instead of moving the string, all you got to do is move your target.
This is a job we did. As you can see, it's 5 doubles, so there's no shadow box or target box at the end of this. I'm just using my auto layout marks to connect all these dots with the laser. You can see the sun's just starting to come up, but nice, easy, quick way. And quality improves, amazing. Got all your starts and stops. Everything, once again, everything that was done there was done with the auto layout. We avoid tape measures and string lines and chalk lines as much as possible.
If you have a guy on a job, you can put him on a machine with a laser, and every guy on the job is actually producing for you rather than having someone just there to move a string line or move a chalk line.
The new dot lasers you can see right there in the bottom corner, that's me still striping the parking lot. That whole job was done, and I think I was in and out of there in like 2 hours. And that's from auto layout to finished product. Perfectly straight lines, that's the key. That's what we're looking for, straight lines and even widths of stalls. So
new this year, electric stripers and line drivers. They're very quiet. You don't have any engine noise, no gasoline exhaust fumes. So when you're working inside of a parking garage, you don't have to worry about setting off the carbon monoxide alarms. No engine vibration. The reduced engine vibration actually works hand in hand with the laser because it makes the laser more visible if it's not bouncing around.
Now the new electric stripers, they all come with the cruise control option. So if you want to go exactly 2.5 miles an hour, you can set the machine at that and press on the foot controls, and that's exactly what you're going to do. You're not going to go any faster. You're going to go 2.5 miles an hour. So you're going to get really good mill thickness. That's what you're shooting for. You want a perfect mill thickness. You only want to be striping at that speed. That's what that option gives you. It's also going to give you an eco mode on the new line driver. That's going to give you all the time you'll ever need. I was lucky enough to use this machine for about the last 6 months. Never once did I run out of battery. Never once was I underpowered. I could go up and down hills. It did everything I needed it to. And at the end of the day, I loved it because it was smooth, quiet. It always performed like it should. Never had any issues with it. So maintenance free, no gas, no oil. Just plug it in at the end of the day and you're good to go. I mean, one thing they did too is they took some technology. So every time you hit the brakes, which if you're doing singles, you're hitting the brakes nonstop, throwing a little bit of charge back in that battery all the time. So it's constantly getting a little bit, and it's using that all day long to help charge that battery. So here's a quick video on it, some stuff we did, indoors. That's it, it's running. I mean, it's as quiet as you can imagine. Loudest thing is the spray, the paint coming out. Nice indoors. There's another job we did, 4 in the morning, had to have it done before sunrise. Look how close we are to that building.
That's an apartment building. You got people sleeping behind those windows.
Yep,
So.
no one woke up, no one turned their lights on. They didn't even know we were there. But in the morning they could park, so they were happy. Made a big difference. There you can see middle of the day, nice and quiet. The laser was a little bit more visible because there's no vibration in it, which makes a big difference. That video you see right there, I think we stretched that laser out 5 doubles, so it was almost 300 feet. Middle of the day, perfect sunny day. There's another good picture of it. And I'm using cruise control in that one. I set the cruise at, I think it was 2.8 miles an hour. Set the machine up to paint, auto gun, so it did 36 feet, gap 24. It did all the work for me. All I had to do is watch the box. Makes it nice and smooth.
So here's the two-color machine. The two-color machine is exactly that. It's got 2 pumps and 2 separate tank reservoirs, so you can actually run a white and a yellow, a white and a black. You could have 2 machines in there and have 4 colors versus, with a single color machine, you need to have 1 machine for every color that you're using.
The 2-color machine I found came in super handy because now I could downsize my trailer. Instead of running 4 machines, I got 2 machines, 2 drivers. That just eliminates that much weight, that much to haul around, that many things to go wrong. And you get to those jobs where, hey, they want 12 lines white, 12 lines yellow. It's right there. You're on the same machine, couple of buttons, move a lever or 2, and you're painting a different color. You don't got to go back to the truck, swap out the machines, get a different color. I know for years we've always wanted, hey, I want a black and a blue machine as a 3rd machine. This is an option now because you can actually have those 2 colors, keep them in your machine, and you're good to go the whole season. So,
as well as you saw in that video, you can run that pressure bead system with that 2-color machine. So, dot lasers, it's kind of the first evolution of the laser. All that dot's going to do is put a dot on the ground and show you where where your paint's turning on. But what we also use it for is to set up and align the head. Also use it to calibrate the machine and the auto layout for the machine.
And we'll cover a lot of this too in a couple videos. Improve starts and stops. If I shut off that dot laser, I put an average Joe behind that machine. I say, okay, line up on my mark I have on the ground and make sure you're lined up perfectly. Without the dot laser on, then I turn the dot laser on, he's off by 2 to 3 inches every time. But now you turn the dot laser on, tell him to line up that, you can't mess it up. It's a no-brainer, works perfect every time.
So here, start dot laser, how to set it up and align it to the head. I think we just have a short little video that kind of goes through that process. It's really, really simple. Probably takes you about 30 seconds to set it up one time.
So basically we just walk through on how to do it, right? It's a simple process. Set your machine up to put down a dot. You just come over to your auto layout mode and turn on your number 2 gun, which is what I'm using here. And simply press the button and you're gonna get a nice 4-inch line. We're set up for a 4-inch line, that's typically what we do. Now we just go down, hop off the machine, adjust your dot laser.
You want to line that dot up center of that mark.
Yep, once you get it lined up, then you're good. It's just a matter of, you can see the dot slowly move into the center of it. It's a 4-inch line, center it, right? It's that simple. And once that's lined up, you're good. Honestly, guys, if that takes you more than a minute, you're doing something wrong. It's a real simple process.
And unless you bump that laser, that dot should stay set up for you weeks at a time. I mean, you shouldn't have to do that. If you raise the gun, you'll have to readjust that dot. But if you mount that dot laser to the arm of the gun, you can swing that gun in and out, and it'll stay set up right on that exact same point. Secondly, using the dot laser to calibrate the line generating laser. Basically, what you're going to do there is just set up a baseline, and you're going to use that dot to just as a reference on the ground to show you the path that your machine is rolling. Same with using it to calibrate the auto layout. You have to, I think this next video will kind of walk through that. But again, that dot just gives you that reference point on the ground to where the machine is going to spray.
Your machine's automatically set up. When you go into calibration mode, it's going to be at 25 feet. Do I need to go 200 feet? Absolutely not. Go 25 feet. And you can calibrate it as good as you need to. And this right here, we just pulled the tape. We pulled it out to 100 feet. We're going to start at 50. We're going to end at 25. We're going to make sure that dot rolls perfectly straight on that 50-foot tape measure. And by the time we're done there, it's calibrated as good as you ever need it. It's going to be calibrated to, really close to what you're looking for. So as you can see here, we're getting close to the end. You can see, if you look closely, you might not be able to see it, but you can see it gets right on that 25-foot mark. That's it. Machine's calibrated. People ask us all the time, how often do I need to calibrate my machine? I tell them I do it maybe once a month, once every 2 months. Calibration to me isn't key. The key is measure and divide. That's going to get you what you need, and we'll get into that.
But again, here we're just throwing some dots down just to check where our calibration's at. Make sure it's throwing a dot down. I think I had it set up to throw a dot every 5 feet. So there are dots at 25 feet, right where we want it. This is the key for the dot laser. It's going to improve the accuracy of your starts and stops. I don't care if you're a veteran or a new striper, it's a training tool. You have that visual indicator on the ground that shows you exactly where your paint's going to turn on. So when you hit the button or pull the lever to start it, when that dot's on your mark, you pull the trigger and it's going to start painting right there. So there's no guesswork. I've had guys tell me they lay shingles down at the start of every stall so that they don't have to worry about hitting that mark. It's going to completely eliminate that step of the process.
This is just a short little video clip to show you what it does. I mean, all that dot laser is doing is putting a dot where your paint's going to come out. So now you know. It's a simple process. But in the past, this is a big deal because in the past we didn't have that. And without having that, you'd be missing your mark, so they created the shingle. They'd lay it down or whatever you're using. But now we have the dot laser, so it makes a huge difference on accuracy.
Your gun is sitting about 4 to 5 inches off the ground. So to actually judge exactly where you're going to hit that point is really difficult. But with having that dot laser on there, it completely takes the guesswork out of it. Now here's just a little short video of that dot laser being used in action.
As you can see, you can really fine-tune your stops and your starts with this dot laser. You know exactly where it's going to turn on, exactly where it's going to shut off. Makes a big difference. Especially if you have a new one. I mean, if you've been striping for years, you never use the dot laser, I know you can hit your marks. But now with the dot laser, it actually makes it a little bit easier.
The big dog laser, the line generating laser, this is the one that's going to actually project a line on the ground. This line generating laser that we've been using for the past 10 years probably, completely eliminated our need to carry a chalk line or a string line with us in the trailer. 100% replacement for the string. Increases productivity. Your restripes and new jobs are going to be faster and the quality is better. Those two items right there, to find a product that can make your quality better and improve your productivity, if you can find that product, that's kind of like a unicorn. They just don't exist very often. Our experience, it's about 30 to 60% faster than traditional striping methods. That's going to vary based on the size of the job. Makes amateurs look like professionals. That's another one. Amateurs or new employees. And it's a one-man operation. So if you have 4 guys on the job, you should have 4 machines on the job and 4 guys laying paint at the same time.
Another thing that's huge with the lasers, wind's not a factor. So if you're pulling a chalk line and you got, say, 20 doubles to chalk and you're using the blue chalk, by the time you're done on a windy day, you look like the Blue Man Group, right? You're just covered in it. It's a mess. Blows all over the place. So it eliminates, the wind's not going to blow that laser. It's never going to move the laser. It's always going to be perfectly straight every time. Quality of your lines. So when we did a comparison, we took a comparison of chalking lines and had a professional that did it for many years paint some lines that he had chalked, and then we put them right next to lines that we used the laser the first day. The laser quality is better every time. Even if you're a rookie on the machine, you will paint better than a guy who's been doing following chalk lines for years. Makes a huge difference. Your eyes are out in front of you instead of looking straight down. So the farther you look ahead, the straighter you're going to roll every time. When you're trying to follow a fog line on a foggy day and you're driving a truck, you're all over the place, but on a sunny day, you can go straight down the road, no problem. Same idea. Get the laser out in front of you, look in front of where you're going instead of looking down. It's going to be a better quality, straighter line every time. Works great day or night. We've proven it. You'll see tons of videos. I think our longest line to date was 730 feet by just placing a simple target at the end, line up our marks, and start striping. We did not, if you're going to chalk a 730-foot line, that's going to take a while. Okay, and to get it straight and to look good, it's going to take really good people that have been doing it a long time. I can put anyone on a machine, tell them to keep that laser in the box at 730 feet, and they can do it their first day. So it makes a big difference. Great for marking ins on seal coat. We got a video on that. No strings for people to trip over. If you're doing a job during the day and you got strings over the place and it's a shopping mall that's open or a grocery store, people are walking through there, last thing you want them is doing is tripping over one of your string lines. So I've actually seen the people try and step over my laser at night, which, there you go. They don't need to do that, obviously. So
this is the big thing here, time savings. Time is money. With a laser, you're going to be running a one-man crew. What you need a line generating laser. You need a shadow box and a target, or a shadow box is the target. And actually, for every guy you have striping, you should probably have 2 targets. One striper and a dot laser. You have all that on your machine and it's ready to go as soon as you get to the job. You don't have to bring anything else with you.
The conventional way of striping, you need a lot, okay? You have to have a string line or a chalk line. People use both. You got to have 2 or more stripers. A lot of people we talk to, they got one guy who does all the striping, right? Well, good for that guy because the other 2 guys are running around moving string line and chalk line all day long. Get those guys off the chalk line, get them on a striper. It helps to have a perfect non-windy day. We talked about that. You know, the quieter the wind, the less mess you have. Nice flat parking lot. That laser will roll nicely through the hills. You can see that by as you're going through it, it'll still see it in the box nice, and 100% perfect layout. When you're chalking lines, if your layout's off, you're going to end up with inconsistencies a little bit, where if you're just doing the laser, you can set the box at the end, that line will be perfectly straight throughout. So
yeah, ideally when you're lining up with a chalk line and you have a lot that has 5 rows of parking that line up, you want to look down all 5 of those rows and you want them to be perfectly parallel with one another. If you end up with if you're chalking those lines individually and one of your layout marks is 2 inches off, now your lines are going to be inconsistent when you're looking down, looking through the parking lot. And it makes a big difference in the finished product.
A company we both used to work for, Tom, Superior Striping, his quote on it is, the LineLazer is the best thing to come out since the line driver. It's improved that much of the workforce. The productivity is through the roof and the quality is that much better. So it makes a big difference.
So amateurs look like professionals. I'll kind of let Chad talk more on this one.
So this particular job, I took my wife to it. She wouldn't know a striper from a lawnmower, but I said, tonight I need help, and guess what? You just volunteered. So she showed up. If you look closely, the parking lot on the left, that was the existing parking lot. So we had to black out everything there. I simply put her on the machine. I said, here's the lever, pull the lever for the paint to come out. She learned the machine by blacking out this portion of the lot. By the time she was done blacking out that portion of the lot, she knew how to work forward, reverse, how to work the lever. She understood how to work the machine. And it was blackout, so she could make a mistake. You know, go a little long, go a little short, whatever. She learned the machine. By the time she got done with that, I had the layout done for the big lot. So now I turned her loose on the big lot. I'm like, here it is. There's the laser, same idea. Keep the laser in the box, hit your starts and stops. Her first day on the job, that's the final product.
I've talked to a lot of guys over the years that would have a guy on a job for 2 years and probably wouldn't let him stripe that parking lot. But you give him a laser and send him to town, you can't screw it up because that laser is going to show you exactly where that machine is going to go. So as long as you keep that laser lined up, you won't have any issues keeping the lines straight and putting the lines down from mark to mark.
And it's one of those things too where I felt comfortable with today's technology to turn her loose on that lot. As I didn't, no blackout, she didn't need to do everything she did there turned out perfect. Here's another example. She's 15 years old, never been on a striper. I took her to the job and I said, here's what we need to do. I turned her loose. This line's 250 foot long, middle of the day. You can see there's not a cloud in the sky. I felt comfortable putting her on the machine and telling her to keep the laser in the box. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, no, but you're going to do it. And when she got done, you'll see at the end of this picture, She painted a 250-foot line perfectly straight. First day on a job, okay? And that, you just couldn't do anymore. You know, if you were doing it the old way, I'd have never let her paint that line. And this was her final product. She did that whole job that day, first day on the job, and it turned out perfect. Customer was really happy. You know, it was a good final product.
So here's another example of a job that we did probably 5 years ago, the auto auction in Brooklyn Park. 1,356 stalls, 41,000 lineal feet of striping. We got the call on Saturday afternoon that they wanted us in there Sunday night to stripe this lot. 11 o'clock Sunday night, they wanted us there. They needed the lot open at 7 a.m. Monday morning. That gave us 8 hours to do this job. We went over there with 3 guys. Chad and I did the layout on it. We had 1 guy striping behind us, and it was all we could do to lay it out fast enough to keep him busy striping behind us. Secondly, with this job, with the deadline that we had, it was about November 20th in Minnesota when we did this job, late season. It was 25 degrees that night, and it was a 30-mile-an-hour wind. With that 30-mile-an-hour wind blowing, if we would have had to stretch a string line or a chalk line across that lot, I'm 100% confident that we would not have been able to get that job done. There is no possible way. Traditionally, if we would have striped that without a laser, that took us 5.5 hours with 3 guys. I would guess to say it would take between 11 and 16 hours with the same 3 guys running string lines and chalk lines. Here's the next morning. I went back at 7:30 in the morning to take pictures. You can see it's already full of cars. But again, the lines are nice and straight. No issues with that. Everything laid out really well. And the customer was extremely satisfied because we were able to meet his deadline on short notice. CarMax Brooklyn Park, another good example of where we use the auto layout as well as the lasers. This job, not nearly as big, 594 stalls, 350 12-inch numbers, 47 16-inch letters, some arrows, some handicaps. This job took us 3.5 hours with 3 guys, and that was 2 coats of paint on everything. Here's the job. You can see how the numbers are all lined up. We used the auto layout to lay out the parking lot. Then after we had the stalls laid out, we came back and used the auto layout to mark the location of every number so that every number was perfectly centered on the stall. A lot of people ask, well, what about all the extra auto layout marks that are on the ground when you're done with that? If you use that mark, you can actually set the number right on the mark and cover that mark with the number so that you don't have those extra layout marks when you're done.
One-man operation, more guys striping, get them off moving string line and chalk line, get them striping. No more string or chalk lines to deal with. I'm telling you, that was the one thing I hated about striping. Who wants to move the chalk line or string line? Nobody would raise their hand, right? That's the last thing you wanted to do. So if that was your job for the day, you weren't looking forward to it. Now you can put that guy in a striper, makes a big difference.
Wind is never a factor with a laser. You get so many dips and peaks and valleys and parking lots for drainage. If you have wind through a parking lot and you have a large dip in the parking lot, that string is not going to want to sit on the ground, and there's no way to keep it straight. So with that laser, you don't have to deal with that. Because of that, you get much better line quality. And again, we want to stress, a lot of people say, well, you can't see it on the ground during the day. You don't need to see it on the ground. You need to be able to see it in your target. So you can use this laser day or night. I would say if you're ever having trouble seeing the laser during the day, you might have your laser aimed wrong. You need to, the lens on the laser is, I think they call it a parabolic lens. So the center of the line is going to be the brightest part of the line. So you want that center of that laser pointing directly into that target, and that's going to give you your best visibility of the laser during the day. If you have it pointed towards, more towards the ground, and you're just getting the tip of that laser line into the box, it's going to make that a lot harder to see during the day in the sunlight.
Yep, that's so what he's talking about. If it's pointing down like this, it's going to be too short. You will never see it in that target, even at 36 feet. Tip that laser up, get it almost level to the ground. That's going to create that line. You should see it every time. That's the number one thing we see with people. It's pointed at the ground. The first thing when they say, hey, I can't see the laser, it doesn't work in Canada. No, it does. You just got to tip it straight up. Okay, you got to point it at the ground. You got to bring it up some, and you'll be able to see it every time. We've never had it fail on us.
The only time I've actually had to make an adjustment for it is early morning or late evening when the sun is directly behind me, you can't paint directly towards that box with the sun behind you. You just have to turn around and go the other direction.
Here's a quick video comparison we did. As you can see on the bottom, the layout's done, right? The layout's complete. So now we go back we're striping while the other person starts chalking lines. You start chalking lines, where do you want to be here, right? You want to be making money. You want to be on the top of that screen. You want to be putting down lines. Better quality, faster, and we're, look at this. As you can see, it's a really windy day. That chalk's blowing all over the parking lot. So by the time they've chalked 2 lines, we've already striped almost 2 lines, right? We're moving on. And it's 1 guy versus 2 guys, right? So you're instantly painting parking lots, which is where you want to be. You get paid once the money hits the asphalt.
That's the key, though. You're just completely eliminated that entire step. So no matter if he can stripe it just as fast, he still has to do that first and then come back and still has to stripe everything. So we've eliminated 1 entire step from this whole process.
When we got done there too, we looked at the 2 lines. The line that you followed on the chalk line, honestly, it looked horrible compared to the laser line. And I don't care how good you are, the laser will be better every time. So
next video we have is going to just kind of walk you through the steps, how to set up the line generating laser, how to get it set up so that it's true to the path that the machine rolls. So right now we're assuming we've already got the dot laser lined up. We already covered how to line up the dot laser. Now you're going to want to get that line generating laser lined up on the same path as that dot laser. So we're just going to pull that laser out and line it up to the head, line it up to the dot.
Everyone asks us, how often do you calibrate your laser? I tell them every time I bump it or every time, the best thing to do is when you get to a job first thing, check your laser in the morning, and then you're good for the rest of the time.
Every time Rich runs into something is when you adjust it.
Every time you run into a light pole, every time you bump it, we usually check it first thing in the morning and then go from there. So. Yep.
So next thing you're going to do, now your dot laser's on here, you want to get that machine rolling on that line, but if you notice the picture on the left, we're actually following the laser in the target. We're not following the dot laser on the baseline that we have established. And as we travel to the halfway point, you'll see the dot is about 3 inches off that tape. So what that's going to mean is if you start painting right now, you're going to have an arc in all your lines that's about 3 inches off. So now we're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to adjust that laser always in the direction that the machine is off. So if that dot's to the left of your baseline, adjust that laser in the target to the left about that same distance.
So once again, once you get it set up, you're good. You're good for a long time, and like I said, until you bump it, until you hit something with it, or...
And to finish it off, repeat that step again. In this case, you can see our dot laser is following that tape perfectly, so we know that our laser setup is done. If on that first adjustment, you're still a little bit off, repeat that step 1 more time. First time you do it, it might take you 3 or 4 times. Once you figure out how to do it, it's about a 1.5 minute long process. If you're working at night, a really, really good way to calibrate and set up that line generating laser is to line another laser off of one of your other machines up in the parking lot. Use that as your baseline, because now you know you're calibrating it to a perfectly straight line rather than a string line that you might, there could be a little bit of a wiggle in a string line. So if you line it up off that laser, you know you're going to get a perfectly good calibration with that laser every single time. So this is just walking through a lot of the ways we're using these products.
I mean, we use it day or night. You'll see a ton of this in the video. Right there, center lines, right? The center lines can be processed.
So a lot of scenarios at night too, you don't have to use the target.
Here's a great video showing you during the day. So that was 3 doubles long, perfectly sunny day. I couldn't ask for a nicer day than that. And I could see that laser all day long at about 250 feet. So no more chalking singles, no more setting up string lines for singles. Your string line is built into the machine. I can't stress it enough.
And you can see, if you have a new employee, that laser's on the ground, you can show them exactly where that line's going to go before they even pull the trigger to paint. Takes all the guesswork out of it.
And these are just tons of examples. We use it all the time, every single day. We never shut it off. If we're striping, that LineLazer's on. There's our big one. We were impressed that day because it was the longest line we ever painted. 730 feet. That was the middle of the day, not at night. Placed the target at the end, and that's when we figured out the laser has to be almost level to the ground, because at first we couldn't see it. That's how we figured that out. We tilted the laser up.
That was really early on in our experience with the laser. We had probably only been using it for 3 or 4 months at that point. So we, as veteran stripers, we'd been striping for a long time. We were nervous about painting that line without having anything to follow other than that laser. So I actually made a couple dry runs at it, and as soon as you learn to trust that laser, if you can keep it in the box, you don't have to worry about it. As long as you have your calibration set up before you start, that line's going to go exactly where you put it.
I prefer working at night, no traffic to deal with, no one's in the parking lot, and I can see my laser better. So a lot of the stuff I do, I can get in and out there before the customer even knows I'm there, and that's why you see a lot of my stuff I like to work at night. So sun's just coming up there, but you can see the laser so well, nice and easy. Don't have to worry about people walking over your paint or stepping in your paint or anything. So that's one thing you'll see us do too, is we run two guns, one on each side. You know, work around cars much better that way. So auto layout, you must believe. Okay, there's a lot of people that have auto layout. I run into them at the shows all the time. I'm like, do you have auto layout? Yeah, but I don't know how to use it, or I don't use it. It's too much for me. Auto layout is very simple to use if you just take the time to learn it, okay? It's 30 to 60% faster than traditional tape measure. We're going to show you how to properly calibrate the machine. It's proven accuracy. That's the one thing you get to the job and I need 10 stalls and it's supposed to be 90 feet and it's 88, right? That happens all the time. Well, this can absolutely measure and divide that perfectly every time for you. And that's where the measure and divide comes in handy. We use that all the time. It's got to be a measure and divide because your customer wants 9 equal stalls. Well, you can give it to them now with the machine. In the past, I know a lot of people might cut, the last 3 stalls at 8.5 or something. Not anymore. Today, everything's 100% equal stalls.
Surface irregularity. I get this question all the time. Well, what about where the lot rolls up and down? That machine is going to measure the exact same path that your tape measure that you lay out in a parking lot is going to measure. So that's not an issue. In fact, the easiest way to describe auto layout, it's the exact same thing as the tape measure, except you ride on it. It measures the exact same way a tape measure does. You have to drive it along the path you're measuring, measure from point A to point B. It just does it electronically. Works great to lay out radius parking, angle parking, odd size stall layout. I've been on jobs where they ask for a 9.23 foot stall. So you can just measure that area, divide it out. The machine's going to give you an exact equal stall size every time. So maximizing parking for a customer, marking ends on a seal coat job, placing stencils. We use it to line up numbers, wording stencils. If you have 10 visitor stencils in a row, you can use that laser to line that up versus pulling a string line out. Here's just an example using it to mark ends. If you look way off in the distance, it's not a great video, but we have a target in the upper right corner of the right video, and we're following that, and we're using the machine to just put down a mark where every stall is. We were at this job, and the end lines were very irregular. So some of the lines were a foot longer than others. Some of them were a foot shorter. And you can see this in my great editing video here. As you can see, the old existing line was probably about 3 to 4 inches past what the mark was. But when we got done, all of our ends were perfectly straight. So you can see the old line, like I said, it was probably 3 to 4 inches longer than it should have been. So when we were done, we left that job, it was perfectly straight ends, which is what you're looking for. That's one thing all of us stripers look at, right? How are the ends and are the lines straight? That's what we look for. The ends being straight is almost more important than the lines being straight, unfortunately, because that's the first thing you see when you pull into a parking lot. So next we're going to talk about how to use the auto layout to measure and divide. We have a video that'll kind of walk you through the layout process of a basic parking lot from start to finish. The lot that we use is probably about like 95% of the lots you're ever going to lay out.
So at this point, the machine's already calibrated, it's ready to go, and it's just we're gonna measure and divide from 2 points.
So here's the lot. 9 foot by 18 foot stalls, 24 foot drive aisles, pretty basic layout. First thing we're going to do is establish a baseline in a parking lot, in the lot. So we're going to measure, in this case, we measured 9 feet out from the curb and ran our baseline on that first stall line.
And in this case, we actually ran a tape down there, so visually you could see our baseline, because we wanted you could actually see the baseline. Where did we start from? Well, we ran that tape so you could see it. So that's what that tape was doing there for us. And we created all of our starting points. So we made, our 24-foot marks, our 36-foot marks, our center lines. All that was created by pulling that tape. You can see us as we're going back. We do T's, C's on the center lines. So we knew exactly where all of our starting point was. So that just squared up our lot, got our starting points for all of those doubles.
Next thing we're going to do is recreate those same marks on the other side of the lot. The only thing different on that side of the lot, all you need to do is have a mark that shows the distance out. We don't need to have any baseline established. We just need a mark that we can set our target on to line up the 2 marks from.
And you can do all this off the machine also. You can set that whole thing up using the marker layout mode. So you can set it up to do 18, 18, 24. You can do all that off the machine now. So it's all in there. You just got to go into with the marker mode on the machine.
Now we have our 2 points set. We're going to put a target on one end and we're going to measure from our first starting point that we had. So we have the machine in measure mode right now and we're just driving from point A to point B. We're going to establish a measurement for that entire lot. Once we have this first measurement, we're going to use that one measurement to lay out every other parking stall in the entire lot. So you can see it's counting up. We're coming to the end. There's where I have my target placed.
Keeping it perfectly straight using the line generating laser, so you know that's a nice straight line. And then at the end, we press our button again, and it's going to tell you we need 15 foot stall, or we need 15 stalls at 9 feet. That's your auto layout, 9.02. Now we save that measurement in our machine and we use that for everything in the parking lot. That way every line's going to line up perfectly straight.
And everything gets laid out off of that initial baseline. So now we're using that measurement and measuring every stall off of that baseline, and we're using that 9.02. So when we lay that out, every single mark is going to be in line with one another, measured off the exact same point in the lot.
So now we go back to the layout mode, and it's just simply putting a dot, like we said, at 9.02. So it's going to lay that dot consistently every time and make that dot exact same spot all the way through the parking lot. Once again, we're using the laser to keep it perfectly straight, so our ends look like you use shingles to paint them. Perfectly straight ends.
And you can see we're laying out 2.5 miles an hour. Probably about the same speed as walking. I don't like to go too fast because then your marks start to get a little bigger. The key where it really saves you the time, if this row was 700 feet long, you could put that box 700 feet away and lay out that entire row at one time and then zip back to your starting point at 10 or 11 miles an hour on the driver and then do it all over again. So you're on bigger jobs, your 30 to 60% that we're telling you you're saving in time could actually, I think it actually could be upwards of 75% time savings.
Yep, every job would be a little bit different.
Yeah, everyone's going to be a little bit different in every application. You have to use it and you have to get comfortable with it. But all the auto layout is, in a nutshell, is an electronic tape measure. So it's going to take all the human error out of all your measuring.
Line drivers. We're going to touch on this a little bit. We've talked a little bit about the electric line driver already. 50% faster. By the end of the day, if you're working a 10, 12-hour day and you're walking all day long, you're slowing down. I know you may think you're not, but I guarantee you by the end of that day, that's a long day, you're slowing down. So it's probably 50% faster, less fatigue. Line driver doesn't slow down after walking. The quality of lines, the more tires you have on the ground, the straighter that line's going to become for you. So we got 5 tires on the ground, keeping that a nice straight line, easier to control.
Increase in productivity. Your line driver doesn't get tired after a 10-hour day. I know from experience that I do. Drive it everywhere. If you're in a parking ramp and you have to, we have enclosed trailers, so we can't get our equipment into a parking ramp. So you can park at the bottom, drive up the ramp, you run out of paint, you quick zip back down. You're not walking up and down parking ramps. You're not, in a large parking lot, park in a central location. You can park your truck one time, never have to move it again until you leave the job. Happier employees, your employees are going to be much happier if they're not walking all night. They're going to be able to go home, go for a walk with their wife, and have a good time. They can be fun to drive. Chad and I have raced a couple times. I usually win, but
True.
other than that, if you're not using a line driver, you're way behind.
So in the past, I used to walk behind a striper, and we'd be walking out there, and some guy would wander by you, and he's like, well, that doesn't look like that much fun. I'm like, no, it's not. I've been doing it for 12 hours, and I'm tired. Now that same guy walks by, and he's like, that looks like a good time. Yeah, it's much better. So this is a perfect example. I mean, you might go home, you might have 1 acre to mow, right? Are you walking it, or are you riding it? Put that same thing into your business perspective. So it's obviously, if you're riding on it instead of walking behind it, it's much better. We actually had to dig up some video because we couldn't find anyone walking behind it. So that's the best we could come up with. Yep.
Auto guns, mechanically operated guns has always been the norm. Everything's gone to automatic guns. Benefits of it, basically simple. It's simple to operate. Press a button to turn the gun on, press it again to turn the gun off. Less fatigue on your hands. You're not pulling on a lever all day. Very precise. When you turn the machine on, it's on. As soon as you hit the button again, it turns it off. There's no delay in that mechanical cable. More accurate job measurements. So if you're keeping job quantities, you get a more precise measurement.
One thing that's really nice too is you can set up constant skip stripe mode, right? So you get to the job, you got some roadway work you're doing, you can set that thing up to paint 10-foot line, 15-foot gap. It's going to do it all day long, and it's going to be consistent with it. One thing we used it for is also doing doubles. So typically here, we have a 36-foot double, 24-foot gap. You can set it up to do that, and you can carry that all the way through. You can put a target at the far end, eliminate a whole bunch of stops and start marks, eliminate some auto layout time. No more spray can. They got rid of that completely. That used to be the old way. The new way is much better. Uses the paint in the machine. It's right there. There's a couple different modes too. You got manual mode. We'll touch on that. Auto mode and semi-auto mode.
Here's just a quick video. Now we're going to walk through this, how to lay out. We already covered laying out this job. Now we're going to show you the way that we actually laid this job out with the auto guns, using some of the features on the auto guns to actually cut our layout down by 75%.
So as you can see in this one here too, they wanted a 3-foot line, 3-foot gap. They wanted all this set up for temporary parking for cars in a bus lot. And that's how it turned out. If you had to lay that whole thing out, it's going to take you a lot longer. Turn on the machine, let it do the work.
So there's our traditional layout. We had to put dots down on every single row. This is what we cut it down to with using the auto guns. We had to mark the very first row and the very last row. We marked our 9-foot stalls. Then we set the gun up to paint a 36-foot line with a 24-foot gap. Push the button and start, and you'll notice there's no layout marks as I'm painting this. I'm watching that target on the far end, and the machine is turning the gun on and off as I go.
As you can see right here, there's no start. The machine's going to turn on all by itself. No auto layout mark there. It's going to automatically turn on and automatically shut off. It's measuring as it's rolling. So all you need to do is focus on your end target, which gives you actually a better quality line.
And it's much easier because you're not looking at two different things at one time.
And if you can see in this, there's your final product. All the ends were perfectly straight. All the lines were nice and straight. It turned out exactly how you'd want a lot to turn out. So, once again, Scott forgot the center lines.
Thanks for pointing that out again. Again, here, example, we used it on after hours parking in a school. They just wanted skip lines because they don't want people parking there all the time. A 3-foot line, 3-foot gap all the way down. If you had to lay that out with a tape, you'd have to mark every one of those lines individually. By having the automatic guns and allowing us to have the machine turn the stripe on and off, it probably cut our time on that job by about 90%. Completely eliminated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pulls of the tape. So there's a great example of time savings right there. Here's the 3 different modes of how the auto guns works. You have auto mode, which is the mode that I use most prevalently. prevalently. Push the button, the paint turns on. As you're painting, when you roll up to your stop point, you push the button again and it turns the paint off. Really simple. Turn it off, push the button once, turns it on, it stays on until you push it again. Manual mode. Manual mode's a lot like what people are used to with the old mechanical trigger. You press and hold the button when you want to start it, you hold it down. When you want to stop it, you release the button. Real simple. Press it and hold it. When you release it, the paint stops flowing.
Next one is the semi-auto mode. So whatever that number is right there, 36, you put whatever number you want in there, an 18-foot line, 36-foot line, whatever it is, it's going to automatically paint that distance and stop. You got to press it again to start it. So whenever you want to paint a 36-foot line or whatever it is, you want consistency, maybe going up to a building or wherever you need it, that's what you do. Put it in semi-auto mode and hit that button, and whatever measurement you tell it to do, it'll do for you. Here's a job I did. This was Morris School. Once again, they wanted a double-use parking lot. They wanted the buses to pull in there, and then they wanted the cars in there when the buses were gone. And they wanted two different colors, and this is how they designed it. And that's how I striped it. If you can only imagine how long that would take one person to do, or two people, pulling the tape for all those starts and stops. This machine gave me the capability of doing all that. I was in and out of that job in about 2 hours. And that's layout, start to finish, getting everything done. And there's a lot of start and stops there. But the machine took care of all that for me. So it was really easy.
Apps and data logging. You're able to download, you can plug a thumb drive in right into the LineLazer. Download all your job quantities from the day, from the week, from the month. I think it'll store up to 50 jobs at a time. It'll give you your paint volume, how much paint you've sprayed on stencils, how much paint you've sprayed on lines, your footage, your mill thickness. You can print that out, plug it into your computer and get a nice printout and see exactly what you've been doing. Google Earth is another app that I don't think we could live without anymore. We bid jobs off of it. We use it to get layout on jobs that have been overlaid.
The other one is time card apps. You know, we use it all the time. You pull into your shop, it's going to hit you a reminder. Hey, don't forget to check in. When you leave your shop, it's going to give you another reminder. Hey, don't forget to check out. We use that quite a bit. Photo editing app, that's where the Google Earth photo editing comes in handy. Get a call from John. John needs to add a handicap in front of door 10A, which is fine. I can hop online. I can look it up on Google Earth. I'll do a quick photo editing, circle it. Hey, is this where you want it? Yep, that's exactly where I want it. I just saved myself an hour trip to run out and meet John. It's that simple. It just makes life a lot easier.
And with Google Earth too, I wanted to mention, you can bid your jobs off of it. You can take measurements of curb lines, measurements of road center line. You can get all those dimensions right off Google Earth. Whereas before, you'd have to drive across the city if you depending on where the job was, you'd have to drive to the job to get those measurements. All that stuff is available online. And I've actually compared it from Google to actually pulling a tape and measuring it. And it's within feet, within a foot or two. It's very, very accurate.
Last but not least, difference between a good job and a bad job. These are just little things we do, trying to help out you guys. Go out there, you blow off the lines, get them nice and clean, sweep off the curbs, get rid of any old excess paint, right? Scrape off the curbs, scrape off the light poles. All that little stuff helps.
Just some more things. You can read through that.
Yeah, use aluminum oxide, silica sand, something if people got a slippery spot up on a ramp where they keep painting it and people are slipping, add some additive to it, make it easier for them. Give the big jobs a bid. Break out your big jobs. If you get a shopping mall, break it out. Give them 5 different options as far as if you want this lot, the other lot, then they can go through and, hey, we're going to do lot 1 and 4 this year and 6 and 7 next year.
Separate lots in certain areas of jobs. Separate them. If you have a great big job, don't try to work at the whole job at one time. Get one area done. Get an area done so you can say, hey, the northeast side of this parking lot is completely done. We're going to move on to the next area. Let the customer choose what they want. If you give them a bid item or a menu item, break down their lot into smaller areas, they might say, well, our budget's only going to allow us to stripe section A. I know you bid everything, but we only want to do this area. So you don't have to refigure your bids after that.
Give out other stripers' name. In the area we're in, we work with all the stripers, and it comes back to help you in the long run. So if there's new technology out there, if there's something that you're doing that's working really good, we share it with all the other people in the business in our area, and it comes back to help us in the future. So if I'm too busy for a job, I'm not going to say, hey, I don't know anyone. I'm going to give them 2, 3 other guys' names, number, and hey, in the future, maybe they'll pass that back on to me. So it makes, we work together in our area, and it seems to work really well. We also, use the green environment. We use a friendly paint for the environment, minimize all of our paint that we need to dispose of. That's something that's good to advertise. Make sure you're getting rid of the stuff properly. Take an aerial view for the client. They always like that when I get done with the job. If I have the drone with me, pop it up in the air, send them a picture. They know it's done. They can see the quality, and they might share that picture with the next customer. So
reflective warning lights, just make sure when you're working outside at night you're visible. Don't take safety second. Safety's always going to come first. Secure your load, when you're traveling, make sure everything's tied down, and let your customer know that you want to work for them, forever. You want to be their one-time, one-call striper. You don't want them, you want to treat them fair, and you want them to call you back again the next time. You don't even want them to go to the other guy to get a bid.
So that's it for the seminar. We really appreciate your time today. Hopefully you learned something from it, picked up 1 or 2 hints, or picked up some new technology. If there's anything you need in the future, feel free. Our email's on there, and I get people that contact me all over the place. And if I can help you in any way over the phone or FaceTime to work through an issue that you're having with something, I'd be more than willing to do it.
Perfect.